It's like in canning, you just fill up the pot with water, you boil it, you make your recipe, you put it in the jars, and then you dip it. Sounds real simple, right? Okay, so first I take this big pot to my sink. Sinks are never right next to the stove. So I filled up this giant pot. So then I'm trying to carry it to the stove.
That's true.
So then water's splashing all over the place and going on the floor. So then they tell you, okay, you bring it to a boil, right?
They said like 5 days later.
The pot it's not boiling. So then you put the lid on and then it's boiling. Okay, but then you take the lid off. You know what I mean? And you put the stuff in and then it's not boiling again. Okay, so how am I supposed to know when to start this? It was just water everywhere. And then I went through all of that stress and then I have a half a jar of pickles left. And I'm like, why is there only a half a jar of pickles? Which I don't even eat pickles, by the way. But why is there only a half a jar of pickles? And then I was sticky. I was confused. Then because it tells you, that's another thing. Wipe the rims down. But see, what it doesn't say is wipe the rims with a wet cloth. I took a dry tea towel and tried to wipe the rims. Now the rims are sticky. So now I have lint from trying to wipe them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is why you need someone to show you, because to someone who knows how to do it, it's become a science and it's very easy. To someone who has no idea what they're doing and they're following the letter of the law, if the letter of the law leaves out a small thing like wetting, like maybe something wet to run around the rim.
My grandma taught me use a moist paper towel to just make sure there are no seeds on it.
I had to figure, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I had to figure that out. That brings me back to the beginning of my growing.
Knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon. Everyone knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon.
My name is Trina, and I am the owner and sole proprietor of the Hood Garden LLC microfarm. I officially became a business and a farm of 2021, so just a couple years.
Okay, so post-pandemic or mid-pandemic?
Yeah, like right after the pandemic started, around about that time when we all had a lot of time on our hands and, things to do, so.
Yeah, I just pulled up a memory on Facebook today that was like sourdough starter and seedlings. I was like, I remember, yeah. Wow, that was a hard time. Anyway, so tell me how you got started in gardening.
Okay, my first introduction to gardening was the homegrown program, which is operated by Phipps Conservatory. I bought my home in 2015. I'm a first-time homeowner, and I've always lived sort of in the inner city and poor neighborhoods and things like that. So I honestly didn't know. When I bought my home and I came out on my back porch, a neighbor actually had these boxes in the yard, but she had flowers in hers. And I was like, oh, those are so cute. Where did they come from? She gave me a pamphlet for the homegrown program. And then I called them and they came out and they told me about their program. And at first, I'm going to be honest with you, as a Black child from the inner city, I didn't experience anyone growing. We grew up in a food desert. The only vegetables that I knew of were really canned vegetables. That was just kind of what I personally grew up on. And everybody else around me was living and growing like that. So what I ended up, I remember thinking, Black people don't grow. This is not what we do. We don't play in dirt. And and then I was like, okay, you know what? At that point, I had a grandson. He was 3 at that point. I said, okay, I'll give it a try for him. If I don't like it, the boxes can come out. It's just dirt, And so they brought the boxes. They came and filled the boxes. I had my grandson out there and we did them. And the first year I was ready to give up. I didn't like it. I didn't understand. Even though they gave help, they gave us a booklet. And I looked at the book, but I didn't really understand it. I didn't know what was going on. It's like Someone can put you in a room and say, here, these are paints and this is paper, and then here's an outline of a picture, just paint this picture. There's no connection to it. So it was like that for me. I discovered the cucumbers were growing along the ground, and I would look at them and they were on the ground, and so I didn't want to eat them, and so they would just sit out there. I would see bugs on the collard greens. I would not touch them. The tomatoes, they gave me a cherry tomato for my very first tomato plant. That thing grows like a vine. It was overtaking everything. I was overwhelmed. They tried to explain to me how to cut back and suckers and things like that, but I didn't really understand. Yeah. So at the end of that first year, I was going to take them out. But then I said to myself, okay, I have to give it a real try. If I don't give it a real try, then I'm always going to feel like I gave up. I said, I'll give it a real try. If by the end of this summer I don't like it, then I'll give it up. So then I started being more proactive with calling them from the program. And I remember Lauren, she was the head at that time. I would be like, can you come over? Like, I would literally ask her. She needed to come over and show me. She came over so many different times and trimmed my tomatoes for me until I kind of wasn't afraid to anymore, and I understood, that I could do it. They're still the bane of my existence, but but I'm more comfortable with them now.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that Phipps was that responsive. And I thought the program was that they were very much hands-on and they would come and help you, but I guess they don't want to just like pop up at your house.
Yeah, no.
Hi, we're here to help.
Yeah, no. You have to. Well, they did provide classes. Mm-hmm. You can go to the classes, but I've always been one of those types of people that I learn better through visual instruction. You know what I mean? Yep. I can read it 1,000 times, but I need to see you doing this to make sure that I am...
do it yourself. That's how I am. I'm a
somewhat.
Kinetic learner. Like, I have to do it to be able to get it.
Yeah. And so they would come out, and then I searched YouTube, and then I searched YouTube for people who were giving step by step instructions on growing things. So I found someone that I sort of liked and I vibed with, and I watched all of his videos and things like that. And that kind of gave me a lot of confidence in growing. And it also helped me I'm very adaptable. So I still, for the longest time, I still am not crazy about like dirt or my food touching dirt. People always laugh at me when I tell them that. I say, but if you look around my garden, everything grows up. Nothing has to necessarily touch the dirt, because I don't know why I'm like that. It is just one of my little idiosyncrasies, and I can't help it. But that is just me.
Well, I think about like the grocery store and all the stuff.
Yeah.
That I see that food touches, or that like produce touches.
Yeah. Okay, so my friend pointed out to me, I don't know what the conversation was, but it occurred to me, and I didn't realize I thought this or I felt this way, but I had to stop and think. In my mind, the dirt that I buy in a bag is cleaner or better than the dirt on the ground. And it was just, it was really interesting, because I always say that I don't like dirt, but I will buy the bags. Well, okay, so the Jiffy potting mix and things like that are soilless mixes. But, compost and stuff. And I still, I put my hands through that. And yeah, well, no, technically my beds are filled with I want to say 40-30, something like that, 60-40 composition of soil and compost. That's what I fill with. Mm-hmm. And then from there, once they're filled, every year after that, I top with compost.
Yeah.
Now, the buckets that I use, usually I will refresh them. I will dump them. I will add compost. I will add, different amendments to it, and then I will refill them. So that's usually the way that I handle the buckets. And I think over the years, I mulch using, my favorite mulch is leaf mold. I find that's the best mulch.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I use. I love the way that it breaks down into my soil. I love the way, that it makes my soil look, and everything flourishes really well in my garden. And it starts with the soil, with the compost, I believe.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think I've learned so many different things during this journey. And that's kind of what makes me want to share it with others. The sustainability, the amount of different fruits and vegetables that you don't see in the store. Again, I grew up on canned vegetables, and it's very hard to, like, there's like, when you grow up on canned vegetables, usually what you're going in the store and you're grabbing your corn, your peas, and your green beans. That's it. A lot of times, if you're just eating canned vegetables, I mean, there's like canned squash and all that stuff, but that's usually, I feel like people who have experienced fresh may, venture into the other things. But those were my staples, maybe a good mixed vegetable, and I didn't even like those, so it was really a challenge for me. My whole thing was always, okay, if it's too late for me, if it's too late for my kids, it's not too late for my grandchildren. So he was here watching me growing. And I think some of my proudest times in the garden were as we were growing. I could say to him, here, taste this. And he would taste things like, he tasted okra. He said, oh, it tastes like socks. I don't like it. But,
fresh, like,
but
right
to me, it was really exciting because he said, after he said I didn't like it, he thought about it for a minute and he said, maybe it'd be better if you cooked it. Which means that there was still an openness about food, even though he didn't like it. It wasn't a simple, I don't like this, I'm never going to have it again. Little things like that also encouraged me. It's like, at that time, a salad for me was lettuce and cheese and dressing, and only French dressing. That was my salad. I ventured next into like cucumbers, and so I started growing a few different types of cucumbers, and then I discovered a cucumber that I initially bought for my grandson called a dragon's egg cucumber, and I tasted it, and it was very, very mild, and it had almost like a watery mild taste and sweet, and so I was like, oh, I really like this. And then as I ate that, then I could start eating, more cucumbers. And so now I love cucumbers. You know what I mean? And so I was like, oh, well, I hate tomatoes. So maybe I'll grow a bunch of tomatoes. And I grew several buckets of tomatoes. I think 13 one year, different varieties of tomatoes that I found online, just, without any rhyme or reason. They look good. And I discovered that I did that for about 2 years. And then I just gave up. In a sense, I was like, I don't like tomatoes.
So you tried them all?
Yeah, I gave them a try, and I don't like tomatoes. But then what I realized was, okay, well, I like salsa, and of course I eat my spaghetti sauce and stuff. I said, okay, so I'm just a person who's just going to prefer cooked tomatoes. Now, I will eat a raw tomato salsa, which I previously would not do. So I feel like that's progress. That's another thing that has expanded for me, my cooking. Prior to gardening, I did not eat salsa. So, that was something else. So my mind has opened up with food. I'm a bit slower than my grandson. It's still a work in progress.
Oh, kids, they'll show you up every time.
Yeah. But it has expanded my palate, and, there are just so many memories. Like, I remember the first time, like, I used to buy bag salad mix. It would go bad because we just don't eat salads every day. We just don't eat them enough, and we throw it away. And I was cooking one day and stuff, and I was like, oh, yeah, salad. I don't feel like going to the store. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I have lettuce outside. And then I think that was the first time I went outside. I came outside and I harvested lettuce, and it was so good. It was very different. It's like the bagged lettuce in the store, it's hard to explain. It has a crisp texture. When you grow lettuce, it's just very soft, but also crisp. But there's like a softness and a more flavor. And again, you can get so many different varieties and types of, and they're so easy to grow. So that was my first year. I grew them in a little laundry basket on top. And then I put strawberries in the side. That was a nightmare to water. It just couldn't stay moist. But it was a learning experience. And so the next year I put it just in a flower pot. And it was so beautiful. I did, instead of just growing full heads, I wanted to do it in a cut and come again style.
Yeah.
Which I just sprinkled it over top of a nice little, like, wide opening type of flower pot. And it was just beautiful. And then we can just go out and cut with scissors and then just let it grow back up again. So it was a lot of things. And then I didn't have money, but I wanted more beds. And so I literally just examined the beds that they brought for me. I pulled from my memory how they had built them, and I built my own beds.
Just replicated it all over the place.
Well, the bucket tower was my own design. I knew that the 5-gallon bucket tower.
I really like that
because of
the
my
buckets are raised up. So like people that don't want to have to bend down
and
all
see
the time.
that was it. I started
great.
having trouble with my back, and so then I started thinking about accessibility in the garden and making it more friendly for me to grow. Again, I just went online and just kind of searched for things. People were making bucket, I call mine a bucket tower. I think they were called bucket towers, but I didn't like that they were making them 2-tier, which means that like they had some that were like on a lower level, like 3 on a lower level, and then a step up 3 behind, which people would place up against a fence. My beds are up against fences when I first got them. I can reach the stuff in the back, but once everything's full, it's a pain and it's difficult. So I knew that I wanted something that both levels were high enough for me to reach them, and they were accessible from both sides. And so that's kind of where I came up with the idea for those. And it's actually grown. I think the first ones I just did 2, and my builds are very simple. I try to stay with as minimal cuts as possible. So they're 8 foot long. They might be 10 foot. I have to measure. But whatever I could buy at the store for the length, that's what I left it at. And then because I'm only doing a certain cut, like they would be 4 foot. So then I would buy, a piece of board, of course, that was 8 foot. And then that way I would just have them cut the boards in half. So each tower, just 4 legs, they would just have to cut 2 boards in half for me at the Home Depot. Yeah, so that was before, and I bought a little drill, and then I forayed into just trying to build other little things. Everything is very simplistic for, if you really kind of look at the basis of it. I think the most intricate thing that I've built is going to be the sink that I built last season. But even that, the length of it is 8 foot because that's what I could buy. And I fit the sink in the center, and then around the sink is where I just put cross pieces and, of a certain size. Now those I cut myself because I got a saw at this point. And again, I just kind of overcame my fear and
you leveled up.
I just did it. Yeah. Yeah. It's been increasingly difficult because I do have, with my back issues, I do have some physical limitations. So what I did was, these are probably my newest beds. And so if you notice, they're higher around the side. And then I've been trying to make the beds a little higher so I'm not bending down as much. I added drip irrigation. I figured that out for myself.
That's real. Yeah. I noticed that. That is huge.
Yeah, I had to. That was very hard. Again, it was a thing that I asked. Phipps had a couple classes, but they weren't able to really. It's one of those things where people tell you that it's simple, and it sort of is. But if you're a person that's never done it before, it's very challenging. You have to sit down. You have to really think about how you want to run it, how many lines, how far it's going to go. Like some of the difficulties that I've had now is because my towers and things are higher, my water essentially at some point is taking a turn and going uphill. So if I try to make the line too long where it's going up and down, then by the end of the line, the vegetables, they're not getting watered as much or properly because the water's not making it to them. So
there's just so much that can go wrong.
Yeah.
So many variables.
Yeah. And last year, one of my lines, I still don't know what it is because everything was in full bloom and I couldn't find it. You'll know when something's going wrong because that water bill will come in and tell you. So
yeah,
it's great because with drip irrigation, my water bill, it makes a huge difference. One year, my water bill from just trying to hand water everything was like, I want to say it was over $500 for 1 month.
Whoa.
Yeah, it would take me almost 2 hours to properly water everything. And I was watering before I went to work in the morning at like 8 o'clock.
Wow.
So I was out here when it was dark, and that just became too much. So I put in a drip irrigation, and now my water bill has decreased by probably more than 50%. My water bill very seldom goes above $200. And if it does, I know there's a problem in my water line somewhere. Well, I knew there was a problem quickly also because all of this was like flooded and holding water in the back.
Unexpected pond.
So it's definitely somewhere back in here. You know, when we get the rain, it's good. And then sometimes I have buckets. Like I have some of these that are not filled with dirt. And sometimes I put those, I just leave those in the yard. And then when it fills, because they definitely do better. Your plants do so much better with the rainwater.
Yep.
They absolutely do. I notice a big difference with rainwater.
The last time when we talked, you were talking about getting back to your roots.
Yes.
And how you discovered the peppers.
Yes.
And there was a gentleman you mentioned named Horace Pippin.
Yes. I think that was the first one. I think around the time that I got interested in the hot peppers, as I said, I was researching seeds. I was just always looking for seeds. And I started going on a lot of different seed sites. I was particularly interested in rare seeds and different seeds of that nature. I wanted stuff with a little heat, but at this point in time, now if you go in a grocery store, you're seeing habanero, you're seeing all these flavors. Back then, I almost want to say just right pre-COVID, at the beginning of COVID, you could only find like jalapeno. Jalapeno, I don't like the flavor. And so that's what led me down the path
it's kind of really direct.
Yeah, hot peppers. It tastes like, well, like my grandson says, it tastes like socks to me. And so
okra and jalapeno taste like socks.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And so I started looking up peppers, and I think the first one that I came across was, I can't remember if it was the fish pepper. I was intrigued by the fish pepper because it was the first variegated pepper that I had ever seen. And so I started looking into it, and then that's when I came across the story of Horace Pippin. He was a folk singer. I can't remember the whole story, but I do believe that his family or him, if you trace the story back, they came from one of the islands and they brought the seeds over with them. So he had the seeds. Now, at this time, there was a guy, I want to say, I'm not positive, but I think it was Roy Weaver, who had a bee farm and he did honey. And back then, it wasn't uncommon for people to treat ailments with bee stings. And so what he traded the seeds for bee stings. And so the Weaver family kept all of these seeds, and they accredited them, and they just sort of put them back out. So then once I discovered that, I felt a connection. I feel like at that point with like growing and, just my heritage, sharecroppers and, our history of farming, the African-American history of farming, post-slavery and, the Jim Crow era and just kind of all of those things, and how now it feels almost like we're in terms of the farming industry, we are coming full circle. So this is a returning to our roots journey, I feel like, for us. I began searching out, and so there were I started with seeds from him, seeds that were part of his collection, and then I've looked up other things like there's a collard green collective, I think it's called, or something or other of that has some seeds that were just kind of passed down from generations.
I love that.
Yeah. And I love meeting other African-American growers or things like that, especially ones who still have family and who did grow up growing, or at least having a small garden in their yard, or someone in their family did. And so then they pass down seeds, and then sometimes, you make friends, and then they'll send you seeds that have come from a long line of their family. I think for that part of it for me has just been, I don't know, it touches a part of me. It just really makes me feel good, and it evokes a lot of emotions. It makes me sad.
Yeah.
It makes me a little bit of sad, but it, just because you think about, the journey of these seeds, like the people that had these seeds and the lives that they've lived, and you know what I mean? Just the journey of them.
Well, didn't they used to weave them in their hair?
Yeah, when they came from, from Africa. A lot of, there are some, okra seeds that came from that. So there are things that I have grown in my garden, such as like the okra, one of the okras. I don't eat okra, but I grow it simply because it has a tie to my heritage, for me. And so, yeah.
And it's really beautiful too. I mean, the flowers are so amazing.
Yeah. And they're great trap crops. If you plant okra with your brassicas, like with your collard greens and your kale, then the bugs will eat the okra leaves, which, the leaves will look bad, but it doesn't matter because the okra itself comes from the flower.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother the okra. And it doesn't bother your collard greens. So they look beautiful most of the season.
Great tip.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to hear you talking about how the growing part goes back so far. But one of the things that you said when we first started talking was like, when you first started growing, you're like, oh, no, I don't touch dirt. Black people don't touch dirt, I think is exactly what you said.
Yes.
And so to go from there to now realize, like, why do you think you felt that way or you had that idea in your head?
I don't know. It's sometimes I feel like in life, it's like I've heard the saying, you don't know what you're missing until you're missing it. And I think it was simply, I'm a very A-type personality, you know what I mean? Like for me, everything has to have rhyme. Everything has to have reason. Like my bucket towers, they have to be even. They have to be, my garden, you know what I mean? When I plant, it has to be pleasing to look at. So I also plant my plants and I design with an idea of when I look out my window, is this going to be beautiful to me? Because if it's not, then I'm not going to want to do it. So for me, it was like the reason that I chose the plant was because of the beauty of the plant. When I read that story, I think it made me think of my grandma. She lived through, those times. And then it makes me think also of times of like, I was born in 1969. And I think like 67, 68 is around the time that, there was also a change that was happening in this country. So it's like, I wasn't a part of that, but then it occurs to me, oh, my grandma was. My mom was there. Like my grandmom's mom, like my great grandmom, who passed right after I was born. So technically she was alive in my lifetime, and she was in her 80s or 90s or whatever. She was actually born, during slavery, the end of slavery, things like that. Because it's only been like 100 and something years. No, her parents, I want to say. It was like her parents. So she did, but as a child, you know what I'm saying? As coming out. And so it's like the way that the world talks about it, the way that media talks about it, it seems like it was thousands and thousands of years ago. And it wasn't. There are still people alive. And, it just, when you are a Black person and you are living in this world and you are navigating, and then whether that comes from growing your own food, I've heard it said before, our sheer existence is an act of resistance. And that has always kind of struck me. And I noticed that in little things in my life, just my day-to-day life, like as we do things and things like that. When I see pictures and things like Ruby Bridges, which was the first child who entered schools, went back when they were segregated. When you look at pictures, right, and then they would have you believe that, okay, racism is not real. It's not here anymore. But the logistics of it is, if you look at pictures, she is still alive today. There were adults that were racist, that were throwing things, that were threatening and things like that. But also along with that, there were children there that were watching that. So you grow up in your household. I grew up in a household that didn't like vegetables. Guess what? I didn't know anything about vegetables because I wasn't taught that. If I grew up in a house that taught me that all white people were bad, then I am going to believe that all white people were bad. So the children that were there, that are most likely just a little older than me right now, grew up in that. And then they had their children.
Yeah.
And so even, you know what I'm saying? So it's like at her age, at Ruby Bridges' age, we have legislators that are from that era. And their thinking most likely has not changed much. You know what I mean? Life is about survival. What you do outside your doors is very different from what you do inside your home. Right? And so just because a person presents themselves as one thing outside does not mean that they are not feeling a certain way inside. And so with me, with growing, I guess just to kind of tie it all back in, when it came across the story of those things for me, it took me on a journey, right? It took me on a journey of thinking about my ancestors, because it wasn't that long ago. And it's like a lot of times, like I said, you think that it's been so long, but it's just sometimes you have those moments where something slaps you in the face and it's like, okay, this wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
You know what I mean? And so it's just, I'm always on the lookout for those seeds because it makes me feel, when they're growing in my garden and when I'm harvesting them and when I'm touching them, when I'm talking about them, it's an honor and it's a remembrance is the best way to put it, you know, for me anyway. So, and it's something that I hope to continue to pass on to my children, you know, that they will have and that they can use, and my grandchildren. Maybe not my children. My daughter, she doesn't want to touch dirt, my son. But again, I have the grandkids, so
yeah, there's always that second chance.
Yeah,
grandkids are a second chance at
yes,
making that happen. Yep.
They're the generation that comes out into the garden with me, and they will know.
So you've developed a lot of recipes around the peppers that you've grown. So is it you've found the peppers that interest you? And I know you don't like super hot, so you're going for different flavors.
Yes.
Yeah,
I knew the thing. I like I'm probably a low to medium heat person, right? But I like flavor. And so through my research, I discovered that hot peppers had flavor. And so that's kind of what took me on that journey of trying to figure out. And then they were also beautiful. And then the crossing, like pepper crosses and things like that. Pepper's just some of the most beautiful things. They really just excite me. Their versatility. I think, I'm trying to remember the first thing. Okay, so probably the first thing that I told you I didn't eat salsa.
Right.
So I grew a tomato that I didn't really, I was growing tomatoes, and as we know, I don't like raw tomatoes.
30 types of tomatoes, none of them. Nah.
Didn't really care for them. But then one of the tomatoes I was growing, just because it was cool, was called a peach garden tomato, something to that effect. So then I was like, okay, I don't like salsa. So then I just kind of looked around and found different recipes to try out. And I discovered it was a raw salsa. The ingredients were simply tomatoes, peaches, things like that. It was very mild. And I think that was my first foray into it, because then I came out into the garden and I had like over 100 peppers. And I happened to be growing some different peppers, like ahi lemon, ahi pineapple, some of the Peruvian peppers. And they're known for a little bit of a lower spice and a sweet citrusy flavor. And so I was like, oh, these would probably go perfect. I think I was also growing a pepper plant called a Fillias blue. And so I picked a few of those and I chopped them up and I made a salsa my first time. And I tried it and I was like, oh, this is really good. And then I let everybody else try it and they were like, this is really good. And it was just, I think that was when I started learning different things, because then what I did was over different times, I tried it with different peppers to see if I could get a different flavor, a different heat level, notice the nuances. And that's kind of where I started. Then I was harvesting all those peppers, and that's how the business came about. I was harvesting all of these peppers and I have to do something with them. And so I had to figure out because I didn't know how to can. Oh my God, the stories I could tell you. I had to teach myself how to can. It was, I was so frustrated with canning when I first started.
Well, again, Phipps has some good information. And I think Penn State Extension has some stuff.
But
Did
see,
you find anything there?
But it's different. Okay, it's like in canning, they say you just buy the pot. They tell you that it comes with all of the stuff that's in the pot. You just fill up the pot with water, you boil it, you make your recipe, you put it in the jars, and then you dip it. Sounds real simple, right? Okay, so first I take this big pot to my sink. Sinks are never right next to the stove. I filled up this giant pot. So then I'm trying to carry it to the stove.
That's true.
So then water's splashing all over the place and going on the floor. So then they tell you, okay, you bring it to a boil, right?
They said like 5 days later.
The pot it's not boiling. So then you put the lid on and then it's boiling. Okay, but then you take the lid off. You know what I mean? And you put the stuff in and then it's not boiling again. Okay, so how am I supposed to know when to start this? Then it was just water everywhere. Then and then I went through all of that stress and then I have a half a jar of pickles left. And I'm like, why is there only a half a jar of pickles? Which I don't even eat pickles, by the way. But why is there only a half a jar of pickles? And then I was sticky. I was confused. Then because it tells you, that's another thing. Wipe the rims down. But see, what it doesn't say is wipe the rims with a wet cloth. I took a dry tea towel and tried to wipe the rims. Now the rims are sticky. So now I have lint from trying to wipe them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is why you need someone to show you, because to someone who knows how to do it, it's become a science and it's very easy. To someone who has no idea what they're doing and they're following the letter of the law, if the letter of the law leaves out a small thing like wetting, like maybe something wet to run around the rim.
My grandma taught me use a moist paper towel to just make sure there are no seeds on it.
I had to figure, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I had to figure that out. And that brings me back to the beginning of my growing. Phipps in the beginning, they had classes and they gave me a book, right? And so that's what I had, but it wasn't connecting. Yeah. So, yeah. And so I think I almost gave up on canning at that point. But I had all these peppers. Someone had taught me how to save seeds from tomatoes. So again, this is how you save seeds. They said rinse them, put them in water. So when I cut open my peppers and I pulled the peppers out, I decided to rinse them off. And I gassed myself. Okay. All of a sudden, these waves, these fumes, they hit my eyes. My eyes were burning. I was coughing. I was choking. I was literally like peeing down my leg at the kitchen sink. Man. It was so bad. I was like, okay. But you know what? When I first started buying hot pepper seeds, they're more expensive than regular seeds. And you only may get like 10 or 11 in a pack. And since I've been growing, I now understand. it is very hard to save the seeds from them, number one. And number two, some of them actually don't have a lot of seed in them. And so there's that issue also. So saving the seeds has been challenging, but then I was like, okay, so I'm saving all these seeds. And I saw an opportunity because my community really doesn't use hot peppers a lot. Like, you have the subset that are like, okay, they like it very, very hot. Like, they'll eat hot sauce on everything, which Frank's Red Hot. Or a lot of people were just like, no, I don't want any heat. It's just too much for me. And so I wanted to introduce these peppers more so to my community, because I'm going to be honest, when I started searching all of these hot peppers and things like that and getting into the hot pepper community, it is dominated majority by white males. Not even just not black people, but white males specifically. There's not even a lot of white women in this space. There are some, but the hot pepper community as a whole and in general is mostly dominated by, it's just white males. They're breeding. It's I'm not going to say it's close, because they love people and they're open, but they get into these communities where they're just, it's like, if you know, and if you find them, then you find them. But if you don't know, you would never know that these existed. And so me as a black woman, when I started growing these things and then on my social media showing people, a lot of people were like, I've never heard of these peppers before. I've never seen these before. And then that also let me know that, okay, so this is something that my community is not familiar with, and this is something that I can give. You know what I mean? So I can become that person for their seeds. And so that's where I started with the seeds, because I had to do something with it. I had like over 100 different varieties. And so I was growing seeds, and then I needed to do something with the peppers. I don't like hot pepper flakes from the store. And so I was like, oh, what if I make my own? I picked some of my favorite peppers and I made different types of pepper flakes. Some are hotter than others. They have a nuance because I'm using some seasoning peppers in them. I'm using some sweet peppers. I am using some super hots, but I'm also using middle of the road.
So are pepper flakes just the whole pepper, like crushed up?
Dry them. Yeah, you dry them, and then
because I hadn't even thought about that, because I just thought pepper flakes were like the seeds, but they're not.
No, it's the pepper.
Yeah.
But when you buy the pepper flakes from the store, that is simply one type of pepper. That is it's a cayenne. They are simply drying and grinding cayenne peppers, which is a flavor. It is a distinct flavor. But again, when you have and it has a certain heat range. But again, when you're making your own, like, I'll give you an example. I can throw in, like, let's just say I want to throw in some chocolate ghost peppers. Chocolate ghost peppers have over 1 million shu. They are very, very hot.
Wow.
But they have an earthy, they have a very earthy, like, citrusy flavor, right? And I may mix those with something that has more of a forward fruity flavor, but has lower heat. And I may add more of that. So the overall, it might be like, let's just say if I use 1 ghost pepper, then I might use 10 of a lower heat pepper. And then I might use a little more of a almost sweet or a seasoning pepper, right? So what you get is you get a complex flavor, and you get, a depth of heat, because the chocolate, the earthiness, is going to give the heat from that mixture a little bit of depth to it, which I really love. I love the chocolate peppers for adding depth of flavor. I started experimenting. There's so many things that you can do with peppers that people don't think of. That's the thing too. A lot of people won't grow hot peppers because they're like, what am I going to do with this? I can make a hot sauce, but what am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
Well, okay, you can take some of the, what are the skinny peppers? Some of the cayennes. There are different kinds of cayennes, but you can take some of the cayennes. I grow a Fillias blue. You can take a empty bottle, pour some olive oil in it, or pour some soy sauce in it, and then drop the whole peppers down in it. It is not going to make your oil hot, because oil, it has the viscosity. It's going to tame that heat down. What you're going to get, depending on what kind of pepper is, you're going to get like a fruitier flavor, that you can cook with, oil, or you're going to get some that has like a warmth. I wouldn't say that it's even hot. You just have like a little warmth on your palate. The kids love the soy sauce with that. You know what I mean? Putting the peppers in there.
Do you put a hole in the pepper or no?
No, you don't have to.
Yeah.
That's also a choice, depending on if you put a hole in it, it'll probably get a little bit more warmer. I've never done it where it's come out where I would have tasted the oil and said, "Oh, this is hot." And remember, I prefer a low to a medium heat. But even with the hot sauces, different peppers, they have different effects on the body. They hit you on different. Like if you were to take a bite of it, it's going to hit you different parts of your mouth. Like some you'll feel in the back of your throat. Some, when you take a bite into it, like a Sugar Rush peach, it's going to burn the tip of your tongue. Some you'll feel the heat on the flat of your mouth. I like to take all of that into consideration whenever I'm developing. Like for instance, I'll make a hot sauce, like some of my hot sauce, like I'll add fruit, which tames down the heat. I make a pineapple hot sauce. I like that for like tacos and things like that. And I use peppers in that. That's generally a quick and dissipating heat, which means that you put it on a taco, you bite in it, you're going to get that burst of heat, but then it's going to dissipate. Then I make another hot sauce that I make using peaches. And I usually use like a chocolate pepper or something in there to make it give it a depth of flavor. And then with that one, I try to gear it towards building of heat. So what you're going to get with that one is you're going to get a little bit of heat, and then that's going to dissipate. But then as you eat more, you're going to start feeling a creeping heat. And then you're going to find yourself still eating, but going, so it's like that heat that sneaks up, like you're not realizing because it's good. And you're still eating.
Is it one of those where you like, once you stop eating for a second, then your mouth starts to burn a little bit, but also you want the flavor more, so then it's called Moorish. They call it. My husband calls it Moorish.
Yeah,
it's very Moorish.
Yeah, my peach sells out a lot, and so does my peach and my pineapple are probably the two best. And then there are some people who just really want a lot of heat, and so I do make one that's super hot, but for me, I've learned that with peppers and with heat, like the sky is the limit. And I think that what I can offer people is to think outside the box when using them. You know what I mean? They can be used as an everyday staple. You don't have to use a handful. You can just use them in mild ways and you get the flavor and the health benefits. So yeah.
So your business, you grow peppers and then you sell the seeds.
I sell seeds.
You sell products that you make from those.
Yes.
So right now the seeds, I noticed on your website, most of the seeds are sold out.
Oh, I had to refresh. Life has just been. I'm a one-man show.
Yeah.
So I have the seeds. It's very hard with everything that's going on right now to keep up with it.
Okay.
But
I thought it was because it's winter, you're sold out.
Oh,
fine.
No, I have them, but that's another thing. It's like I have grand ideas for this business, but because I'm a new business person, I don't have a network. I don't really have a support system in this, and so everything I try to do myself, and I still work full time, and you know what I mean? And then I also have a family that I'm trying to help. There are 3 kids here, 2 of them under 2.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and I have health issues. Like, during COVID, they discovered that I have a cyst on my spine. And, where it's located, they tried to reach it through a needle. They don't want to operate. So they tried to reach it through a needle and break it up, but they couldn't reach it. And so it's kind of just there. And that caused me a lot of mobility issues and things like that. And it's really hard. I wanted to build a network of volunteers, but just knowing how to do that, writing grants, it's just running a business is a full-time job in itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm struggling, and I'm trying not to let it fail, and I'm trying, because I have a vision that I'm just convinced that if I can just hold on a little longer, things will get better. that's kind of what I just keep telling myself.
Do you grow your own seedlings?
Oh yes, I start everything in the house. Yeah, I've gotten to the point now where I don't think usually the only thing that I buy, if I buy any like seedlings or flowers. It took me a long time to put flowers in my garden because everywhere that a flower could go, I'm like, something food related and pretty can go there, you know? And so I've had to start thinking of flowers in terms of them being edible in order for me to be willing to plant flowers, which is how, which is why I have like the nasturtiums. And so I purposely kind of try to pick flowers that I've discovered can be eaten. And it just makes me feel better about planting them. Other than that, the only flower, I would just go buy a bunch of marigolds and stick them around. So because I had to, but yeah.
So what's next? That's usually what I ask. And then I also want to ask, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you would like to share?
No, I think I've covered everything. Okay, so there's two different versions of in my ideal world. Okay. So in my ideal world, if I had to be here and I had to stay here, I would open this up to classes. I would love to teach people how to cook with not only hot peppers, but other things in the garden. I want to be able to teach them in a way that is hands-on and that they can actually see food growing, and put some stations out in my yard where we have water and we have electricity and they can harvest, and they can learn how to and do can their foods or to make meals out of what they're growing in their garden. I would love for people to know that you don't have a lot of space. Yes, I have a lot of space, but if you can pull elements from my space and grow them anywhere, if you have a deck or something, because I'm growing in buckets, on the table, you can't tell there's anything in them, but there's flower pots there. There's a tower garden there. You know what I mean? There's just stuff growing in everything and everywhere, So, for me, an ideal, like along with teaching, I feel like is my passion. So some sort of way this could become a teaching area. And then what I say, a second thing would be, if I wasn't here, I would love to have a place where I had a little bit of land that I could do the same thing. So that's just it. Location boring. Yeah.
So you're not thinking about moving away. That's where I was worried about.
Oh, no. I would love
want additional space. That's great.
Yeah. But I think even what I want to do is doable in this space, because I really want, it's very important for me that the people that have the most access to my space are people who grew up like me, in a sense, that are just like uncomfortable with the idea of growing, don't know where to begin, don't think it's for them, don't know what to do with it when the stuff does grow. That's the ideal, and I feel like I'm located in an area where that could be possible. You know what I mean? In all honesty, if I moved somewhere where I had more land, it would most likely be more rural, which would kind of take that element out of it or make it a little bit harder.
So you want to stay within, a community that has neighbors.
Yeah. Cool. I really, if we tie it back to our heritage, I think kind of sort of just, not even just my heritage, but I feel like I have a need for a feel of community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to build a community of people who are becoming like-minded and learning and growing together, and support of one another, and friendships and like a family. I don't know, maybe it's idealistic in this world in this day and age, but that's really kind of what I want.
I don't think it's outrageous. I think it is idealistic, but I think it's necessary too. I think the only way we're going to survive is community. So Trina, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
knows that food is cool.
No secret.
Eat that food with a bowl and spoon.
With Bowl and Spoon is written, produced and hosted by Shelley Danko Day. Original theme song was written and performed by Paul LeBreeze and friends. You can listen to With Bowl and Spoon wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review and share. Follow us and send us questions or messages on Facebook and Instagram at With Bowl and Spoon. Thanks for listening.
Bowl and spoon. Bowl and spoon. Bowl and spoon.
when I first started, I didn't know that I could build shit. I think my very, very first project was that table over there. A guy made it on YouTube, and he put the plans up for it, and I was like, oh, I could make this. I can make it very simple if I just make it 4 foot tall and 8 foot long, because I could 2 by 4 by 8. That's the way they come. So if they're that long, then that's, you know what I mean? So the less cuts. And then